Welcome to the Soul Tide podcast. I'm Brecken.
And I'm Brittany. This is your space where we keep it raw, real, and 100% authentic.
Let's get Soul Tide, sis.
Hey guys.
Hey guys. Welcome back.
Welcome. We're doing a little bit of a different vibe today. If you are not watching on YouTube, you should.
You probably should this time.
Yes. Because we're doing a little mic'd up sesh.
Mic'd up with mommies.
Mic'd up with mom.
But anyways, it's going to be really fun. We're going to do a workout and we're going to talk about some stuff.
Yeah. We're doing a little workout. We're going to chat, like just a little bestie chat about divorce and co-parenting, which is a heavy topic.
It's a heavy topic. Yeah.
And so we thought it might be fun to just like throw it in the mix while you're lifting. Because like, you know, when you're lifting with your bestie, you're just talking about
you just grunting and talking and
grunting,
peeing your pants if you do the wrong move. If you're a mom, you'll get that.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's gonna be fun. So let's go.
Let's get into it.
Let's get started.
We're going to do this and talk about co-parenting and divorce and all the things because Breck and I have both been married and divorced and we have kids with them and have just like learned a lot along the way, I feel.
Yeah. I mean, lots of people can speak to that who have been divorced, but I do feel like you and I figured out how to master it. Not master it. I don't know that you ever can master it, but we figured out a way to all of us be cohesive.
Like we fostered good relationships with our exes.
Yes.
And I feel like we've really prioritized putting the kids first.
Yeah. And I feel like at the end of the day, that's really what you have to do because let's be honest, it wasn't easy. I mean, I'll speak from my experience, but it didn't always start as a healthy, functioning co-parenting relationship. It was a lot of work.
Right.
But I feel like for me personally, what supported me the most in all of it was knowing that we had if we didn't have anything else in common, we had one thing in common, and it was our daughter, and it was we both wanted what was best for her and her well-being. Yep. And so I think that when you can put that to the forefront of your mind, being able to do the things that you need to do for your kids is that much easier.
Right. The first thing I wanted to touch on is the fact that it's not always going to feel like the world is ending.
Straight up, yeah.
Because I remember, I got divorced very young. I got married very young and I got divorced very young. And I remember thinking like the world was ending, truly. None of it made sense. Obviously, like my brain was not fully like developed.
Yeah, that's a key component there too. I can understand that one.
And like we both made a lot of choices that like led us obviously to divorce. But I remember thinking like, it's never going to be okay.
Yeah.
And like when I was young, I was like, I think 21 when we got divorced.
Yeah.
Like already had a baby and everything. And I was like thinking, I'm not going to be okay. Yeah. And I didn't have like the wits about me yet, I don't think, to even like, or the tools to be able to work through that it would be okay.
Sure. Well, and your life experience was so limited up until that point. And also, to be fair, like in those moments, it doesn't feel like it's going to be okay until you're on the reciprocating end of it and you can see the silver linings that have come from it. But like, it is a tough one to navigate because there's no handbook. What I learned is that it can look exactly how you want it to look.
Right.
I had such a perception of divorce and I had so many we've all had friends who come from divorced parents. And I had one specific example of a healthy co-parenting functioning like divorced relationship, and it's my cousin Heidi.
Yeah.
And she made it look so seamless and flawless. And I know that it wasn't, but like she would be at events with her husband and her ex-husband and they all did it together.
Yeah.
So I knew that like when my ex and I got divorced, that was something that I strived for, but like the how-to is different for everybody. I feel like what worked, constantly going back to that whole like, my daughter is collateral damage in our war. She didn't choose this. We don't get to punish her for us choosing this. Right. Because I had a lot of friends in high school or college or whatever whose parents couldn't even be in the same room as each other, like literally scream at each other. Every time their kids were with different parents, they were talking bad about them and pitting them against each other. And so I knew going into my divorce, it was heavy. And it was, again, we both made choices that ultimately led to the divorce. I don't think one person is responsible. I think we both contribute to the downfall of a relationship. There was a lot of hurt. There was a lot of anger. There was a lot of resentment. But underneath it all, I knew that like we had to figure it out for our daughter. And so it made navigating certain situations easier and knowing that like keeping a level head for her. And that was my one bit of advice I feel like I've always told people, because I've had a few people be like, how'd you guys do it? You made it look so easy. It wasn't easy. And my like number one thing was like, we do it for her, but like we do not talk bad about her dad in front of her.
Right.
That was a big non-negotiable for me, with family, with friends, all of it. And again, we all made decisions that weren't great. And I had family members who didn't love certain decisions, and probably vice versa. The one thing that I always told everybody was like, that's her dad. That's what's the word I'm trying to say? That's an
extension of her.
Extension.
Yeah.
That's an extension of her. Us calling him out or saying something bad about him is her thinking something's wrong with her. And there's nothing wrong with her. And she did nothing wrong. And so that was a big no-no for me.
Yeah.
We don't talk about him in front of her in a negative way.
Yeah, I love that. I feel the same. And I think also something that's helped me and like my co-parent is if we do have these feelings of like, not resentment, but if we're having these issues, like we really need to sit down and figure it out and have a conversation and like really get to the bottom of it and the root of it, because we don't want the situation to be toxic for our child. And like you said, they didn't do anything wrong. They didn't choose it. And so I agree with that. I love that.
Yeah, I felt like that was very supportive. What was the initial co-parenting dynamic like right after the split?
You know what? In the beginning, there was a lot of resentment and there was a lot of like, well, I get him this time. And it was a lot of like tit for tat, and you've had him this amount of time, so I have to be exactly even. And eventually we learned how like that's just not going to work.
Yeah.
The time cannot be completely even. It never will be. But in the beginning, it was hard. Like, it was hard not to have resentment towards them. But it was so hard to miss your baby. Oh my gosh. Like,
devastating.
Literally, like, I mean, if you're divorced and you share a child or children, you understand that when they leave, part of your heart is literally gone.
It's gone.
It's like this emptiness inside of you. And so I had to learn how to navigate not feeling resentment towards him for that emptiness, because I also chose that.
I love that. That's a mature response, because I think a lot of people, and I have found myself guilty of that in the thick of my separation and divorce, wanting to play the victim and be like, this is your fault. Yeah, he made some really painful decisions, but like, as did I. And so I think, to your point, recognizing, trying really hard to remove the resentment and the blame, and just honestly just sit in what is. And for me, it was just the pain of like, now I don't get my child this amount of time because of our decisions and our ending of a relationship. And you have to put aside a lot of ego and pride to be in a space to admit that.
Yeah.
That's how, for us, when we first separated, because we separated for a good chunk of a year before we got divorced, and it was still very much like that. But I feel like we would trade her back and forth, and we lived in different states. And I mean, for the first couple months, it was not a great relationship between her dad and I. There were stabs, wounds, digging the knife in, like passive aggressive comments, just mean things, unnecessary comments were made. It was immature, and it was all, now in retrospect, even her dad and I have talked about, or had talked about this towards the end, when we did really well, it was from a place of hurt, and we just missed our kid.
Right.
And, but yeah, those first, I mean, it was months where I would drop her off and I would climb in my bed, and for the duration of the weekend, he would have her, I would cry the whole time.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to get to the point where I did a lot of work, and we'll talk about that, but it's not that I looked forward to the moments when she was gone, because I never looked forward to it. I always missed my child, but I learned how to work with the gaps and work on me while she was gone.
Right. Using the time your advantage.
But the initial co-parenting dynamic, I would say, for him and I was immature, and it was nasty, and it didn't have to be that way.
Right. And I think, like, to be fair, you're also not only like, when your child is gone, mourning your child being gone, but the relationship in general. I think like in that first initial divorce, at least for me, like those first few months or even like a year into it, it's like, did I make the right decision?
Oh, there's a lot of introspection.
Yes. And it's like, you see them, and it's like this person that you shared all this time with, all these intimate moments with, and like you shared literal child with them.
Yeah.
And it's like you have love for them still. And it's hard to like not think you want to be with them because you know you made the right decision, but it's like you remember all of that, your relationship. So you're not only working through like the co-parenting relationship, it's also like navigating all those like very intricate feelings and like
there's so many dynamics.
Oh my gosh,
there's so many dynamics. And to your point, like I think we can all speak on this. And I think if we could bring our exes in here and talk to them, I think that
they would.
They would, yeah. I think we can all speak from like the pain of letting go of a relationship that we know that all four of us knew didn't support us, while separating the feelings like you talked about of like there's still love and care for somebody. I loved and respected my daughter's dad till the day that he died. Like we were friends and we cared about each other and we shared a person together and we knew we weren't meant to be together. But you're navigating these heavy emotions while processing something so raw, while trying to make it okay for this little person with big feelings. And so it's messy at first. I don't know of one relationship, maybe I'm wrong, that like completely comes out of a divorce and it's rainbows and daisies and butterflies.
Right.
It's freaking work.
Well, any marriage is not rainbows and butterflies. It's a relationship and it has nuances and all the different dynamics. And so there's going to be tension sometimes.
Yeah.
Or all the time at first.
Yeah. And so I think we're in unison in saying that it wasn't easy at first and it wasn't amicable at first.
No.
I think it's taken us both work and time to get to where we both are and were.
Work from both sides.
Both sides. Yep. Okay, another question in regards to like beginning. Were there any boundaries that you had to set in the beginning?
I feel like we had to set a lot of boundaries for the other person dating.
Yeah.
And like what made sense for like introducing another significant other or any of that. And then also set boundaries with like how much time we saw each other when we would do drop off, because there was like at first those like nasty comments and all the things. And so there had to be like hard lines of like, no, I mean, and we lived in a different state at the time, so we didn't have family that could like bridge the gap of like drop offs. Yes. And so like, because I would have like had my mom do it, but I lived in Texas at the time. So it's like, I had to be like very clear on, and same with him. Like we both had to be like, no, you can't say that. Because I said stuff all the time too.
Same.
And so I feel like hard lines with words that were said and what we're okay with. But most of the boundaries came from like him or me like dating someone else.
A trial and error kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But like really I feel like the biggest boundary I've set the whole entire time is significant others. Like we don't introduce our son to like someone else unless the other person has met them first.
I like
that.
At
least like on FaceTime.
Something,
or
some sort of interaction, communication. But that's healthy. That's mature. I love that. I think in the beginning, obviously for my ex and I, our boundaries shifted and grew and changed, obviously as we grew and changed and shifted. But I feel like because there were the nasty comments, like you said, my ex and I lived in different states because when we separated, I moved back home. So when we would meet up, we met up halfway, which was also just awful.
Right.
It just, my poor kid the whole time, like navigating all of it was just a lot. But we would meet halfway at the same gas station. I mean, the same lady was there every time. She always knew us.
Not the lady.
She always knew. We'd do our exchange. But I had my mom come with me every single time because I knew that he couldn't help himself. And honestly, there were times that I couldn't. And so to protect my peace and his and our daughters, I from day one was like, I'm sorry, I will not be coming without somebody. And as we became more healthy, and as I learned to have more of a voice, and him as well, we were able to do it one-on-one and stuff like that. But I do feel like the amount of time we were together, it was a quick pass off.
Yeah.
It was focused on our kid. It was focused on when we're meeting up next. It was taking the emotion and the backhanded compliments and sucking up your pride and putting aside your ego to just know that, hey, I'm bringing my kid to you and you're taking them. So, and also I think for me, I did a lot of texting because, sometimes phone call, like in communication sometimes is because texting was easier than phone calls. I was very emotional. And so it was really hard for me. So,
and it's like,
there's a paper trail.
There's a paper trail.
And I think that we all needed that at that point. We all needed a little bit of a a boundary. So.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. What does putting the kids first really look like in everyday life? I feel like truly this one is like a
step back.
yeah. This one is like a suck up your pride type of thing because like you were saying earlier, Breck, kids get caught up in the like collateral damage if we let them.
Yeah.
And you kind of need to protect the children from that because they didn't choose to get divorced. They were born into a family that they thought was going to be a family, you know, forever.
I mean, didn't we all, right?
Right. And so I feel like for us, putting the kids first was not having arguments in front of the kids or discussions in front of the kids.
Yeah.
I mean, we share one kid, so the kid. And that's also not talking bad about the other person or like, and also I think something that was big for us was letting Rome have a space to even talk about the other person. So like, I think a lot of times in divorce, it's like, their house is their house and this house is this house. But for us, it was important for me to give him a space that like he could talk about his other house.
Yeah.
And his dad, or like he could be excited about going to see his dad and he can be like, talk to me about what they did. And so that was like, I feel like the biggest way. Yeah.
To putting him first.
Yes.
I mean, I feel like mic drop. That's exactly what, I don't know that I can say more to that because I agree it was my non-negotiable, even in the thick of a lot of some really heavy, hard stuff and some nasty comments and navigating my own feelings towards a matter. I knew from the very beginning that like talking about my daughter's father in a negative way in front of her was a no. It was a no. I mean, she was 3.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's like you said, like she's an extension of me, but she's equally as much an extension of her dad. And so people bashing him and putting him down, I don't care what the frick he did. Like, don't do it in front of her.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, there were times where I got on quite a few people where I'm like, I hear you, not in front of her. It's just not fair. It's low vibration. And it's just not okay to talk, for me, bad about somebody who, I shared a life with.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out, but like I share a kid with that person and they love that person and I respect and love that person. We didn't work out, but like, so for me, not talking about her dad, like, and I had my moments where I said crap and I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? Because then I see her face and I see the big emotions that are coming up and the way she has to process it. And she's asking me these questions and it just didn't support us. And as she gets older, she'll ask questions and that's okay because she's mature enough to ask them. And I'll know how to filter them in the best way I can for her and I, but I don't need everybody else's opinions affecting her. And so I think filtering out the noise from her dad and I saying stuff about each other to her, to other people, like that was a big thing for us. And we learned the hard way sometimes, but we figured it out. I also loved what you said, where you said allowing them to talk about their other home and their other life and whatever that entails. I mean, was it hard? Yeah. I had to put aside a lot of pride and ego.
Oh my gosh. Same.
When she would talk about things. And I mean, in the moment, like I was really struggling. I couldn't give her a lot of the things that her dad could. And I felt like a failure as a mom in so many dynamics and aspects of my life. Like I couldn't even keep my family together, right? I couldn't provide for her. I was living at my parents' house and like, I'm getting emotional talking about it, but it just allowing her the space to be happy about both homes and both lives, I feel like supported her in healing and growing faster than she could have had I been like, we don't talk about that here. Like, your dad can give you that because of this. Like, yeah, it sucked. It was really hard. And I had to put aside a lot of pride and ego to do so. But like full circle, I mean, Bobby and I ended up where we ended up as friends because we did that. So I loved that.
No, I feel that so deep.
Yeah. How do you handle disagreements about parenting styles or discipline?
Taylor and I actually have the same parenting style.
Really? Yeah, you do.
We really do. And so like, I have not had to navigate too much when it comes to that. But I will say it's like all ego in the small moments that we have disagreed. I think he might be a little bit more like rougher than me.
Yeah.
But he's a dad.
Sure.
But it's like, I have to pull back and be like, okay, is this wrong or is it different?
I love
parenting.
That perspective.
You know, because I think there is a wrong way to be a parent. I'm sorry. If you're going to like abuse your kids or not be attentive and just neglect, I don't think that's a great parent. I'm sorry.
I agree.
But most of the time it's not wrong. It's just different
It's
than
just different.
your parenting style. And so really you have no control over what they do. I just think it's dropping your ego and having conversations
with their higher selves, like you
with their
talked
higher
about.
selves. Yes.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like for me, I can speak on very differing parenting styles and forms of discipline. My ex and I parented very differently. And the more work, I say this every freaking episode.
Yeah.
But the more work I've done on myself, the more I've been able to see it for what it is, right? I think that we operate a lot from our worldviews and our paradigms and the skill set that we have and the trials that we've gone through. And I recognize now that at the time, my ex, I think, operated out of a space of shame and didn't want to ruffle feathers or set boundaries because he felt guilty. And I did too. I felt so guilty about our kids being, our daughter, not our kids, our daughter being in a broken home, right? And so I think both of us operated out of a space of fear, and I'll give you whatever you want. It was a Disneyland parent, but I feel like I jumped out of that phase quicker than he did.
Yeah.
And so that's where I can speak on, for a long time. It didn't look like that at the end. Like, I feel like we both, again, just figured it out together, but I was establishing boundaries and setting lines in the sand, and she would come home with like gifts, right? And so that was a tough one to navigate because I would have to have a conversation. It was speaking to my the guilt that I had where I couldn't provide those nice things for her. So I did have to release the shame and the ego and recognize that, like, that I'm feeling guilty that he's giving her a bunch of stuff because I can't give her that. But pushing that aside, also I recognized it wasn't supporting our daughter, because long term, we have to teach her that you don't get to get everything you want. My ex and I just really had to have a lot of hard conversations where I was like, this isn't going to support her long term, because as an adult, she's going to expect to get everything because people feel guilty about her circumstances or scenario. That's not real life. And it taught me to have boundaries too, because, am I doing these right?
Yeah.
I feel like, again, in the very beginning, we operated more out of fear and guilt that this was the life that we had provided her when we made an oath when we got married that we would be together forever. For us, what worked, I don't even know if I'm giving sound advice here.
Yeah, you are.
I feel like for us, what worked was having some hard conversations, but coming from a place of like empathy, love, and no ego. And that took a while to get there. But I feel like in moments of like disagreement, or we wouldn't necessarily align, calling each other out in a kind way, we figured out how to navigate that. But like, again, we kind of came full circle where we talked about it together.
Have you ever had to swallow your pride for the sake of your child?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I actually just recently had to swallow my pride for the sake of my child. This was like, honestly, the ultimate test, I feel like, is the other day, Rome and I were like dancing. It might not seem like a big deal, but like it hurt me to my core and I had to swallow my pride. But we were dancing, and we always dance in our house. Like, we just turn on music and blast and whatever.
Yeah.
And my ex has seen someone, and Rome looked at me and said, "You don't do it like so-and-so."
Ooh.
And I was like, okay.
That's the biggest.
Literally, it was like a stab to my heart, and I really had, like, I was triggered. Like, I started crying, but I had to like turn around and walk away, and I'm like, I can't, he didn't mean that maliciously.
No, because children don't.
He's 8 years old. He did not mean that maliciously. And it wasn't like he was like, you don't do it like her. It was like, you're not doing it like she does it.
Yeah.
But in my head, not like, it was the comparison. It's like, is she going to be a better mom than me? Is she going to, and just like this spiral of like, oh my gosh, am I good enough? Am I a good enough parent? And I had to like take a second, go out of the room and like regroup and be like, okay, he's not doing this to hurt me.
No.
Doesn't mean anything about me.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was, I had to check my ego. And honestly, later on during the day, he asked me, he's like, Mom, are you sad? Because it kind of did like send me into a little bit of a spiral. And I was like, you know what? I'm not mad at you. You did nothing wrong. I was a little sad when you compared me, or I didn't even say compare. I said, I was a little sad when you said that, but I know you didn't mean it.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I didn't,
And to your point right there, he's like, wait, Mom, no, I didn't mean that. And kudos to you for walking away.
I was going to be like,
sucking it up.
Excuse?
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I think I can speak for me in moments of like fresh divorce versus longer. There were times I would snap back and I'm like,
Right.
So kudos to you for like recognizing, turning away, and then also giving him an opportunity to be like, to communicate that with him,
Right.
but in a healthy way, and be like, I'm sorry, this wasn't about you, it was about me.
And
it's mature.
Well, I didn't want him to, because I mean, our kids feel everything.
Oh, yeah.
We were just talking
Yeah.
about this. They feel every little emotion, and especially a highly sensitive child, which Rome is,
Yeah.
and he could feel it. And I'm
knew.
sure he felt the shift. And I didn't want him to feel the shift and then not trust his intuition, because he asked me what was wrong, and he knew it.
Nothing, or
and
whatever.
then I say, oh, nothing.
Yeah.
I didn't want to pretend. And so I just was like, okay, like, how can I go about this in a healthy, non-egoic way?
I love
Doesn't
that.
happen every time, but that was the most recent
that's
time.
That's growth. I don't have a specific example,
Yeah.
but I had many of those, especially when she was younger and there were other women in the picture. It's hard not to compare. And on the reciprocating end, it's so interesting because as I got healthier, I recognized having another person in their life contributed in a lot of good ways that I found out. Like there were a lot of those same people that I was being compared to or whatever ended up being some people I was very grateful for in my daughter's life in the long run. But yes, I've had to suck up my pride a lot, and it's a true test. It's a true test. That's a fun one. What internal work did you have to do to get to a healthy co-parenting space?
All of it.
Yeah. D, all of the above.
I feel like it's ever changing. There's not an arrival ever, I don't think. Even in life in general, there's no arrival. It's like always changing, always evolving. So it's like the internal work, I feel like one started with like talk therapy for me.
Yep.
And then it's evolved into like plant medicine and breath work and like deep soul healing and somatic healing. And like it's ever evolving. And I think you get to a place that you're healed. Like you feel like, I don't feel like I feel closure from the situation. I feel good about where we're at.
Yeah.
And things still come up every once in a while.
You have your triggers and you will.
Right.
But you've done a lot of work to figure out how to move through those versus like react quicker or be a victim, or that's from my experience. It was more
same
like
with you
reactive
too.
versus more internal.
Yes.
Using the tools that you find from all of that. I agree with you. I think I'm very similar with that. At first it was cry therapy.
Yep.
Every day for months.
Well, mine was party and drinking therapy.
It's great. Whatever the therapy was, you got it out.
I needed it, honestly.
Yeah. And I had some wild. I mean, we had some fun together.
We had some fun days.
And then, we did actually. And then the deeper I dove and uncovered the layers of why certain things triggered me, allowed me to look at things from a different perspective. So talk therapy, ketamine was huge for me. I mean, that was not necessarily my co-parenting though. That was more the grief of losing her dad, which was another dynamic. It did bring up a lot though, from our married days that I've now had to work through again, and certain situations and all of that. So I think it's still relevant, but like ketamine and plant therapy and I think constantly getting curious. We talked about this in our last episode, but like I've learned to ask questions. And when I ask questions, I remove a lot of my emotion from it, and I'm able to approach it from a more level-headed state. But all of the work and constantly doing the work. Yeah. I have found that for me, like I can't really ever stop because new things come up. I'm evolved and I'm changed. But now I'm looking at it from a different angle, right? Now I've hit the experience at this angle, but now I'm looking at it at this angle. And so I just think you constantly have to do the work. Yeah. Or that's been my experience.
Well, and yours is even so much more complex with grief on top of it.
Yeah.
Like, because you experienced so much of that time co-parenting with him, and now it's like learning to do it without him.
And that has been a very interesting thing to navigate is making decisions and not having to ask her dad. Because that was something we always did, right?
Yeah.
That was another big thing that we did that supported us was like, even the simplest things like getting her ears double pierced.
Right.
She wanted them for her 8th birthday. And I was like, well, let me call your dad.
Yeah.
Involving him in things that seem so minuscule. I guess that might be a bigger one. But there were a lot of things that even like were probably smaller than I'm like, well, I got to talk to your dad about that. You know? And allowing him to feel involved
Right.
and me to feel involved and make these decisions together, the more I pushed him out, the more he wanted in, but in with a vengeance. And I get it, because
Right.
vice versa.
Yeah.
If he would make decisions, I'm like, what were you thinking?
Right.
So yeah, that's been an interesting one to navigate. And back to the drawing board of all the healing and all the things, is trying to figure out how to like trust my decisions.
Right.
And I talked to Josh about them too. And we had a triangle and a square at one point, all of us just bouncing ideas back. We had a group chat, you know, talk about growth. I mean, it was me and my ex and his girlfriend and my husband, and you do it for your kid.
Yeah.
You do it for your kid. How do you keep communication respectful and effective?
Honestly, with us, it's been so long that we've been doing co-parenting.
Yeah.
Like, it's been 8 years or maybe even more.
Like a walk in the park at this point,
that it's like, I feel like we just have a general respect for one another, but it wasn't always like that. So I feel like, one, texting, like you were saying, texting at first is actually really good, because you can kind of think about what you're going to say. There's a paper trail. And also it's like, you can gather yourself.
Yeah.
Before.
You don't have,
But on the other end of that, sometimes it can come across with uncertainty, or the clarity's not there. And so like a lot of times Tay and I will have to like, hey, can you hop on a call, because this isn't making sense.
but you can communicate.
Yes.
That.
And so
yeah,
we get on a call and it's like, this is what I meant, and this is what I said, and this is what I meant. And it's just, we are very clear with communication. But boundaries wise, it's not like, we're not in a situation where it's like Chan is like, you can't text him.
Yeah.
Which I know there are situations like that.
Yep.
And I feel for you, because it's really hard to like communicate with an ex, like for the current person. I'm sure for some people,
it takes a mature person to be on the reciprocating end,
right,
to allow that space, because they very much contribute to a healthy co-parenting relationship. Is like your partner or spouse.
Yes,
they do. It can be make or break as well.
Right.
And we lucked out.
We did. And honestly, I feel like we both have very confident men now.
Yeah.
And I feel like we were both very upfront and clear about our situations. We're like, hey, we're divorced. We're healthy. We talk still when it involves the kids. And that's just how it is, kind of. And obviously we have boundaries. It's not like we're going to text at all hours of the night whatever. But it's like, just like a mutual respect.
Yeah. Totally. I think exactly what you said. Texting was helpful. You sometimes would get in the beginning the keyboard warrior on the other end. Yeah. But the texting still helped, because the space in between the response usually warranted hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Right. There was thought behind it, versus like word bashing each other, texting a lot. And then also, just communicating for me, like you said, like, hey, can I get a little bit of clarification? And when I came from a space of like sucking at my pride and being like, I don't get it, almost I made it more about me and not understanding and never attacking the other person. Right. I feel like it softens and lets down the guard, and we can have a warm conversation, versus like, this is what you did, this is what you said. It's attack mode and people get defensive. Right. Or that was my experience. And it was the same for me. If he came at me, I'm like, whoa, bro. Yeah. You know, versus like, hey, give me a little bit of clarity here. Yeah. Trying to understand. This is about our kid. Yeah. Clear, concise questions and conversation. The 3 C's. Clear, concise. Click, click, click. But also I think what helps too with communication was like, there are moments where, we'd expound on our lives, but we did ask about each other's lives, but we didn't. Right. Like, it's more like surface level. It's surface level, because that does get confusing and conflicting. It's like the core of our conversations were always about my daughter. And then like hey, it's good. You're looking, or how you doing? You looking good? Or like your ex, your kids who are not with him, love him. Love him. Yes. And that's how like my baby knew Scotland's dad for less than a year, but like he would come say hi to her, and you'd be like, say hi to Uncle Bobby. And like, so like interacting like that was supportive for our kids, but not like asking questions that were not pertaining to our children. Yeah. Totally. That helped, because it wasn't really my business. Right. Unless it was affecting her. Yeah. So keeping it like single focused. Right. Helped. Yes. Is that? No, I love that. What are some practical tips or phrases that help de-escalate tense moments? I have a lot of recent examples. Yeah. It's so funny, because I feel like it ebbs and flows with co-parenting. Like sometimes there's a lot of tension, and then sometimes you're coasting. Yeah. And I feel like
I mean, it never gets to a point of like craziness or whatever now, but like Taylor and I had like some disagreements recently,
Yeah.
and he actually like was like, we were talking on the phone, and he's like, okay, let's just like take a step back and like look at the bigger picture.
I love that.
And I think that's, and we've both used that. It's like, what's the bigger picture here? It's, are you trying to prove a point, or are you trying to solve a problem?
And that's two very different concepts.
Yeah. And like, I have to kind of take a step back and like maybe shut my mouth sometimes. And not even because I'm saying too much, but it's like, let's look at the bigger picture and see, like, are we solving this problem for Rome, or are we like in a tit for tat type of thing? You know?
Totally.
Because it can easily get escalated, and it goes right back to ego. It's like,
totally.
Are you coming from a place of love or from ego?
Yep, 100%. I love that.
And even if they're not coming from a place of love, ego is such a low vibration, and like being rude and all the things, that's very low vibe. And
it is.
If you stay in your heart, they will meet you there eventually.
They
always.
I feel like that's my tip.
Yep.
Keep consistently showing up like you, or how you would show up authentically. Push aside the hurt, and that's hard, but like keep showing up like you, and you keep showing up how you want other people to show up. And it does come full circle. It does.
Yeah.
Fighting fire with fire just doesn't ever seem to work.
No, it does not.
But removing the ego and showing up out of a place of love and just your heart and your true desire to like work through it to help your kid, like there is no low vibration there.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Generally. So
I love that.
Yeah, it's a good one.
That is a good one.
What would you tell someone in the thick of a toxic or hard co-parenting relationship?
It will get better if you let it get better. You have to give them the space to act like you want them to act. You cannot keep holding them to what you've seen in the past. You can't keep holding them to that version of themselves if they're trying to change. If they're making the effort, obviously if it's toxic and they're abusive, or it's just not a healthy situation, like remove yourself from the situation if you can. But like if you're in the thick of it and like they're trying to change or you're trying to change, you have to give them the space to change and not just keep holding them where they are. Because I feel like I've done that in the past where I'm like, well, you used to do this and da 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 da. But you don't, there's no way they can show up differently if all you're seeing is how they used to be in your marriage, in a toxic marriage.
And also it's like, give them the grace you want somebody to give to yourself, right? Come from a place of love, because at the end of the day, whether it didn't work out in your relationship or not, sure, it hurt everyone. But like, you still want to show up for each other to create a healthy relationship for your child. You know what I mean? And so it's like, allow people to change, encourage them, like to push them to be better, but don't hold them to a space of who they used to be, because we're not who we used to be.
Right. And when you're in like fight or flight in a marriage, you're not going to show up as you want to show up. Like you just won't on both sides. So it's, you can't really like compare who they are now or like how they're parenting to maybe how they were showing up in the marriage.
Yeah.
I mean, the question was like, if it's like extremely toxic, I think set strong boundaries, which toxic people do not like boundaries.
Yeah. The pushback is real.
The pushback is real. But be strong. Honestly, like courageous. Sometimes it takes courage to speak out against someone that's a really strong personality. If your ex is, or that is really well spoken. I feel like that's something that has been big for me, is like when our relationship was toxic, he's so well spoken that sometimes I felt small.
Sure.
And like I didn't know how to speak up for myself. I think learning how to speak up for yourself and be courageous regardless of like how they are acting or who they are.
Yeah. I think, and honestly, I think that actually helps your relationship, because I found when I was more submissive in situations and not sticking up for myself, and we grew more when I gave him pushback, and vice versa, like pushed each other to show up differently for the best interest of our daughter. And so I love that.
Yeah. I
think that's a good tip. And I think that we've talked about this a lot, but like choosing your kid at the very end of this, that's my biggest tip. Is I'm going to reiterate it. They are collateral damage in somebody else's war. They didn't choose this. So they shouldn't have to choose sides, and we shouldn't have to make it harder for them. the ultimate goal is to create a space where you can support your babies and thriving. And for us, it looked like relationships where we co-parented really well, and our exes were friends, and they were, at family functions with us and our current partners. It worked for us. It might not work for you, but I think choosing your children over choosing your pride and your ego wins every time.
Mic drop. Love. Well, thanks for working out with us.
Thanks.
We didn't do that much working out.
Thanks for doing our 3 exercises with us. It's a lot harder than it looks.
It is, but we're going to get the hang of it. We'll get better.
All these mic'd up people, I'm like, how?
I know. Love you guys so much.
Love you
Thanks
guys.
for tuning in.
Bye.
And we'll see you next time.
And that's a wrap on today's episode. We hope that you felt seen, heard, and maybe even a little empowered. If you loved today's combo, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your girls.
Let's keep this Soul Tide community growing. Until next time, stay true, stay bold, and most importantly,
Stay you. Love you. Mean it. Bye.